I'm really excited about today's session because it takes all that we've heard about the impact of ACEs and trauma have on a child's brain development, about the critical importance of a caretaker's capacity to provide stability and respond to a child's needs, and about how science-backed techniques help children heal through evidence-based approaches. It's going to help us see that with the right supports, foster parents are the intervention to help kids heal from trauma. Of course, you're all familiar with foster parents, those caretakers who open their hearts and homes to kids victimized by abuse. We often call them heroes, and they are, but they are so much more than that. They are essential and critical to an effective child welfare system. They are called upon to be parents, counselors, healers, mentors, disciplinarians. They need to attend meetings with DCF, school, courts, and medical personnel. An investment in them is an investment in giving foster children the opportunity to be healthy, safe, and thrive. And who best to prepare foster parents to make sense of the sometimes puzzling behavior, feelings, and attitudes of children in foster care than an experienced, skilled, and trained peer, a fellow foster parent. Before we begin the session today, I do want to give Representative Finn, I don't know if you figured your background out or if you want to say a few words before we get going, or we can, oh, there you are. So good to see you, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to, I mean, it's not as good as I would like, but I couldn't figure out how to put a picture in the background, so I just blurred it. I just wanted to say thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. You know, I found it to be very informative, and oftentimes I thought it was a little bit above my head, but you know, being a part of it has been very, very good. And so I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that's on the meeting today, but also that has participated in presenting to all of us. It's been great. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and we did get we are so thrilled to be here. It's hard to believe it was over your head because we know, in working with you and your teams, just how serious you take this issue and really, you know, ask great questions about what it is that we're trying to do. So thank you. I know that Senator Gomez is also running a few minutes late. Oh, maybe. Oh, there he is, Senator. Good to see you. I don't even know you've connected. Rep Finn just gave a few words. I don't know if you want to say something before we get going. We've done a little bit of
I am so
setting.
sorry. I'm so sorry. I ran over on another meeting, so my sincerest apologies to the group. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to all of you who are attending to the 5th and final trauma series for the Mass Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. The MSPCC has done an incredible job over the past sessions, what trauma is and how it can affect the lives and developing brains of young people. Every session I have learned, and I know that today will be no different. I want to thank the people of the MSPCC, the specialists and experts who have put this information together and sharing their knowledge, and everyone that their willingness to learn more about how we can help young people be the best versions of themselves. So thank you so much. Again, I apologize for my tardiness, but we're always on time. So thank a legislator for that. But thank you for all the amazing work that you guys continuously to do. And I really appreciate this series that we were able to accomplish over the year and my office be a part of.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator. As I was saying, it has been a thrill to be able to do this, and we appreciate the partnership in which it's been accomplished. So thank you. So before we get going with today's session, let's pull up the slides, and I ask you to bear with me for a few reminders. As a reminder, this is a series to promote a better understanding of children in foster care and their needs. Next slide. I'm always, again, thank you to everybody for joining us. I'm always sensitive that you see my face and people are so gracious to thank MSPCC, but we are part of a collaboration with the generous support of the Health Foundation of Central Massachusetts is implementing an innovative program, Encompass, which enhances supports for foster parents. Next slide. And these are our great partners, many of whom you've heard from during the course of this series. And I am just so fortunate to be able to work closely with each of these organizations. Some logistics. Please be sure you are muted when you're not speaking. We are recording this presentation. However, the questions and answers will not be recorded. As the presentation is going, if you have any questions, we encourage you to use the chat. And we'll be answering questions as they come along and certainly at the end. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenters. Diane Lanny is the lead trauma coach at UMass Memorial Children's Medical Center. She supervises and trains others to be a trauma coach. Diane is the co-chair of the National Child Traumatic Stress Network Subcommittee for Trauma-Informed Parenting. She is a national expert on the resource parent curriculum, and she pulls from her years of foster care experience in her work and is most passionate about elevating the voices of foster parents and others with lived experience. Dr. Jacqueline Reinhardt is the Assistant Director of Trauma Services at Luck Inc., one of our collaborating partners and a community mental health agency located in central Massachusetts. For the past 15 years, Dr. Reinhardt has provided comprehensive and individual services to children, adolescents, and transitional aged young adults in a variety of capacities, including therapeutic schools, residential programs, hospitals, and outpatient settings. Dr. Reinhardt is the project director of the Central Mass Child Trauma Center and is responsible for the operational and fiscal oversight of trauma services. And Ashley Johnson is an independently licensed social worker and the program manager of trauma treatment services at Luck. Her professional experience includes practicing as a clinician for the child exposed to domestic violence, rapid response team programs, outpatient therapy, and intensive in-home family services since beginning at Luck back in 2015. Ashley is trained in multiple evidence-based trauma-informed treatment modalities, including many that we learned about in the last session, and has engaged in the co-facilitation of the National Child Traumatic Stress Network Resource Parent Curriculum. It is my pleasure to hand the program over to Dr. Reinhardt. Jackie?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I am in good company. I feel like for this group of people, you've had the pleasure and opportunity to hear directly from some of our favorite colleagues. And together with Ashley and Diane and I, we're really excited to be able to be here with you all to really talk about something that we are really quite passionate about. And you're going to hear that today, I think, in our presentation. We are very passionate about peer models and the power and utilization of experts through experience. We're going to be able to have the opportunity to reflect a little bit on some of the content that you've seen over the past 4 training series sessions with our colleagues, and really be able to talk about and highlight some of the really amazing work that has happened in collaboration with MSPCC. It's important, though, for us to kind of give some context as to why us and why are we here. So as Dr. Jessica Griffin talked about in session 4, she had this really beautiful timeline, which highlighted the longstanding and ongoing collaborative relationship between MSPCC, UMass and the FACES Clinic and Lifeline for Kids and the Department of Children and Families, as well as Luck and other invested colleagues across Massachusetts. So our partnership has truly spanned over 14 years, beginning first with the rollout of one of the evidence-based models you heard about last time with Dr. Griffin, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. We've gone on to do a tremendous amount of work through the Massachusetts Child Trauma Project, and today with our partnership with Encompass. So we're really going to be focusing today on the power and collaboration that happens through peer models, and really being able to emphasize and talk about the ongoing support and stabilization and sustainability of these models. But first, we have to introduce you to an important person, and her name is Annie.
Thank you, Jackie. Annie is a mother and foster mother through the Department of Children and Families. She takes high-risk teenagers that have experienced trauma and have been removed from their biological families. Annie has been bringing her foster daughter to therapy at a local community health agency Through this mental health agency, she connects with the clinician for 15 minutes check-ins, discussing her concerns about the youth and the behaviors she is witnessing in her home. Through this relationship, Annie receives support and trauma-informed psychoeducation related to these reactions and engages in the affiliate response. Annie absorbs all of this information and uses it to actively advocate for her foster care children. Soon, Annie is asked to co-facilitate something called the Resource Parent Curriculum. Through this, Annie shares her skills and knowledge about raising kids with significant trauma firsthand. Although she values the opportunity to share her knowledge with other families navigating the system, she continues to experience situations that will test her limits. With little support from others who just don't get it or understand why she fosters children. Annie is then faced with the difficult decision of closing her home and no longer takes foster children. Despite her exhaustion and frustrations, Annie comes to realize that her role has made her an expert by experience. She successfully reframes the skills gained during her time as a foster parent and shares with others how she had navigated a very confusing system by acting as a peer support to other foster parents. As a result of her knowledge and advocacy, Annie becomes a trauma coach.
Thanks, Ashley. So we're going to be talking about Annie and her experience throughout our presentation this morning, because she will play a vital role in us kind of talking about that sustainability and ensuring that we're able to support child welfare, children, and resource families. So it's important though to talk a little bit about the valuable role that resource kinship and adoptive parents play in not only supporting youth, but also in helping them heal from their trauma. So if you think about Dr. Forkey's presentation in part 2 of this series, she talked a lot about the power and importance of co-regulation. She talked a lot about something called priming the pump, and that we do this through connection, through establishing a felt sense of psychological safety, and through predictable and stable interactions. And through this, we know that children can heal, specifically from trauma. So we know relationships can be a change agent from trauma. So resource parents like Annie, even though they have so much value and love and support for their youth, they face really significant challenges, which often result in turnover or disruptive placements, which can really have a profound impact on both children and the child welfare system. So that's a really important term that I want to operationalize for the group, right? So placement instability is a specific term that we use to describe children who have experienced 3 or more placements during their time in child welfare. In our 2021 annual report for the Department of Children and Families, we know that children between the ages of 0 and 17 on average experienced 5 placement moves for every 1,000 days in placement. And this is actually a really fantastic improvement, almost a 40% improvement relative to placement instability and stability in 2018. But we know that placement instability comes with significant cost for both youth and the caregiving system. So we can have child-specific risks, such as re-traumatization. We have disruptive attachment with future caregivers, increased mental health issues, and that research has shown that multiple placements have been found to lead to delayed permanency outcomes, medical concerns, and academic difficulties. So how many children are we talking about? Really could be anywhere on average estimated between 22 to upwards of 70% of foster care children placing in placements can disrupt in a year. So we have these concerning outcomes, right? So we have to remember though that there is some power and opportunity that we have and why we're here talking to you all today. And that's through the power of training, connection, and collaboration. So we know through supporting the child welfare system, when we're supporting youth and resource parents and caregivers in positive ways, we can begin with healing. And that really starts with training. So our colleagues through the Center for Child and Family Health and at Duke University through the National Child Traumatic Stress Network says an essential but often overlooked component to promoting trauma-informed care within child welfare is through educating and empowering foster, adoptive, and kinship caregivers with trauma-informed perspective to use in their parenting, as well as when advocating for services for their children. We know relationships can play a powerful role in supporting youth and healing from trauma, but this also requires us to really wrap around and support resource parents. Before we talk about the training and consultation model that was utilized in the Encompass program, it's really important for us to talk about other peer models that have paved the way for the work happening here in Massachusetts. So as I mentioned earlier, those collaborative partnerships have played a vital role in trauma-informed care throughout the state. And one of those ways, one of those partnerships is through the resource parent curriculum. So Caring for Children Who Have Experienced Trauma, or a workshop for resource parents, is an 8-session module training program for resource parents that was developed to assist caregivers, including resource parents, pre and post-adoptive families, and kinship parents, developing a better understanding of how trauma affects children and how that can influence their thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Unlike other training programs, RPC is really profoundly different because it's co-facilitated by both a professional, typically a mental health clinician, and someone like Annie, right? We have a foster parent who truly is an expert through experience. RPC is designed to enhance caregiver knowledge so that they're better able to communicate with the kids that are in their care. They can positively influence behavior, and as a result of those relationships, globally reduce the stress related to parenting. RPC has actually been successfully implemented across several child-serving agencies here in Massachusetts, including Diane's program at UMass, at Luck, and our partners at the Justice Resource Institute. We know RPC works, right? And as Dr. Griffin talked about a little bit last time, that we have group therapy and group training through learning community models has a really positive synergy, right? We know that through research conducted by our partners through NCTSN, the result of participating in RPC, resource parents were significantly increased in their trauma-informed parenting abilities, their ability to manage and tolerate problematic misbehavior, and enhance their self-efficacy to care for a child who has experienced trauma. Now, RPC is just one way that we're helping support youth and families and child welfare. But now more than ever, we really need to be talking about how are we going to support and think outside the box. Increasing access to mental health supports that are trauma-informed and culturally responsive is essential. But this is actually happening during a really difficult time, not only in our state, but across the country. According to the National Association for Behavioral Healthcare, or ABH, there's a significant workforce crisis here in Massachusetts. In their outpatient mental health clinic crisis and workforce brief summary that was released in early 2022, we know that for every 10 clinicians entering the work in mental health clinics specifically, 13 clinicians are leaving. As a result of the workforce shortage, children and adolescents wait, and they're waiting on average for 15 weeks for services. And we have upwards of about 14,000 individuals on wait lists for outpatient services to receive the evidence-based models that Dr. Griffin talked a lot about in episode 4. We know that we need to think about upstream prevention and the integration of peer support models, because if we can successfully do this, we're going to support and reduce the strain on the overall mental health and child welfare and child serving system. The challenge with individualized services is that everyone needs trauma-informed intensive treatment, such as cognitive TFCBT or ARC or ARC-GROW. However, we know that all children, and especially kids coming from child welfare, benefit from trauma-informed relationships. They benefit from the power of connection and care, and this starts with the caregiver. We know that research suggests that experiences both pre and post licensure training. So for foster families, it not only is creating a sense of community, but it's positively impacting their satisfaction and retention. When we compare to current foster parents, former foster parents, and those planning to quit, we're less likely to report having received adequate training, especially related to teens, adolescents, and children with special needs. And that has a really profound impact on turnover and retention. So we know that on average, the turnover rate for foster parents can range anywhere between 30 to 50%. So as we kind of transition into this next few slides, it will be important for us to think about how powerful and what a wonderful opportunity it is that we can look at and integrate a trauma coach model. Before we do that, we should check in with Annie. Ashley?
Yeah, so we know that children who've experienced trauma need one supportive, stable, consistent caregiver in their lives to overcome those adversities. You guys learned that in the ACEs study. But we also know that those in the helping field need support, whether clinical supervision, conversations with peers that get it, or their own therapeutic interventions. Annie has been a tireless advocate for foster parents to get that support. We can't take care of others within the system, within a system that doesn't take care of us, and in taking care of ourselves and our peers. These supportive positions not only help the well-being of the Annies in the world, but also spread the great wealth of knowledge to others who are on a journey of fostering. Annie has been able to support the growth and development of other trauma coaches, some still acting as foster mothers and some finished with that journey, but all being cultivated for their skills and ability to support those that are taking care of our most vulnerable children. Annie envisions a state in which every foster parent is paired with a trauma coach who has lived experience, been there, done that, and can support them through the challenges that are ahead, with firsthand knowledge and psychoeducation related to trauma. Next slide, Jackie. All right, so when we think about the Encompass program and the Encompass training, we're really talking about training these amazing people who have lived experience, right? So they bring their own wealth of knowledge to the program, and myself and Diane trained them to be able to talk and have individual conversations with families about this resource parent curriculum. You know, abilities to advocate for the children in their care. And we know that being a resource parent can often be work in isolation. We know that coordinating increases the access to natural supports. So if I'm connected with a trauma coach as a foster parent, I'm engaging in the affiliate response. I'm engaging in an ability to be able to talk to somebody who gets it, has been there, done that, and you know, really able to have that conversation and that communication so that there's somebody who gets it. Really thinking about that collaboration, that coordination and connection. So we're holding those emotions with the resource parent. We're their emotional container. We're really able to hold all of those pieces that are really stressful about parents and children who've experienced pretty severe trauma. And we're looking, so how we kind of thought about and trained these coaches were through a learning collaborative. And so we didn't want, here's your training, go on and do this work with families. We really wanted to be able to check in regularly with them, you know, be able to have conversations about what they needed in order to support the families that they were working with. So we've engaged in over a year of learning collaborative with these trauma coaches. And I think one really important piece to note is that all of those evidence-based treatment models that Dr. Griffin talked about, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, ARC, ARC-GROW, PCIT, parent-child interactive therapy, are really all include a parent component, a caregiver component, when done correctly and to the model. Because children don't heal in a vacuum. They need that system of support. And that's why this peer model is so important. For me as a clinician, most of the time, my role is not to talk about myself. My role is to focus on my clients. And I definitely talk to Diane about this a lot. With the resource parent curriculum, I'm allowed not only to be a clinician and share my experience of working with children, but also I can be a mom. I can, tell people that, it's a really hard job. And I, see these kids who've experienced trauma for a few hours a week, and you have them in your home 24/7 and you're parenting them 24/7. And so really kind of having that conversation and being able to have Diane in a space with me to say, yeah, I get it. I, had to, drive this kiddo to soccer practice and over to this IEP meeting and all of those pieces that it takes to be a resource parent. So really kind of giving a human side and a clinical side to trauma-informed care. Next slide, Jackie. All right, so one of our amazing trauma coaches in the Encompass program, Jill, said, "It is an honor to be a trauma coach with the Encompass program. Sharing our knowledge of trauma as well as having lived experience has been extremely comforting to our clients. We have been or are right there in the trenches with them. We are doing the work. This helps them to feel safe to share their stories and most of all connected. I am so lucky to have been trained by some wonderful trainers in the RPC as well as other caregiving models." So some outcomes that have come out of the Encompass program have been really positive across the first year of the program. So participants were 8.4 times more likely to report utilizing external care providers in the past month at post-test as compared to their pre-test. So they're utilizing resources external to these programs. They're reaching out for extra support. They're feeling supported by their peers, by other foster parents. Encompass participants' confidence in trauma-informed fostering increased significantly from pre-test to post-test. So they felt like they had additional knowledge in how to raise children who've experienced trauma. And then evidence suggests that the Encompass program may have a positive impact on caregiver knowledge about trauma and capacity to improve trauma-informed foster care to children. So really kind of giving children a space that they need in order to be able to be successful and feel supported. All right. So back to Annie. She sees a space in which foster parents are an active and accepted member of the child's team. It may seem simple, but knowing which evidence-based treatment model you're asking for to help your child in your home function. Do they need a 504 or an IEP? Where are the best summer camps that will understand your child? Is this behavior normal? Or answers to the questions of why every time I do laundry, my kid has a meltdown, can ease the stress of a foster parent and decrease the likelihood of placement disruption. If we are expecting foster parents to be that consistent caregiver, we need to take care of them and provide them with peers who get it. We know the mental health system is tired and burnt out, and that not every caregiver gets the 15 minutes with the clinician to normalize what is going on for Annie. But a peer can meet our basic human needs when trying to survive the affiliate response. All right, so I'm gonna move on to Diane.
Well, good morning, everybody. And if you notice my energy level is high, it is because this is a culmination of a dream come true. And not to be overly dramatic and overly emotional, but just to let you know, and do a reveal like they do on the cheesy TV shows I like to watch. I am Annie. I am that person who went from burned out, stressed out. I can't deal with these kids, but more importantly, I can't deal with the system stress that's making me nuts. And now the end of my story has changed into, I feel as a parenting professional, I have things, knowledge and wisdom that I can offer others. And speaking to all of you today it's incredibly overwhelming. it is the hopefully not the end of my journey, but a very, very significant milestone in where we have grown. So I'm going to back you up just a moment and kind of fill you in on some of the details that Ashley nicely left out when she created this character of me. Annie's story, we created it that way because the story is not that unique. We burn out foster parents at an alarming rate. There are a lot of Annies out there, and I'm just one of them. And when we heard Ashley talk about Jill Cummings, who's another foster parent that we're currently trained as a trauma coach, and she referred to it as being in the trenches. And that resonates with me. And Jill and I connect on this level because it feels like that for us. As fellow foster parents, it feels like we're out there doing that 24/7 work, and nobody really fully gets us. So I'm going to talk a little bit later about sustainability, but I wanted to plant that seed in your head right now that if you are feeling that burned out, stressed out point, and you're not able to regulate and be that regulated caregiver that a child needs, it doesn't have to be the end of your journey, that we can take you out of the trenches and give you a desk job. So that's essentially kind of what has happened here. And I'm going to fill you in on some more of the details. This slide here was actually created for me by a medical student by the name Kevin Skyer a few years ago. He took the notes when we originally started this program, and he looked at the notes and said, okay, so what are the issues that we're dealing with? And we found out that, yes, we're dealing with some issues around the child. And these things that were in his notes were the most common things that popped up. Concerns about, where do I get therapy for my kids? You know, how do I deal with this kid that's tantruming or is constantly lying? There were typical issues that kept coming up over and over and over. And then there were also issues for the caregiver. There were things that kept coming up, like, I don't understand trauma. I don't really get how my child's brain works. I'm not understanding what is normal development. What is typical? Is this falling in the range of that normal? And then there's the bigger picture of, I don't know how to communicate with my DCF worker. I'm afraid to tell my DCF worker that I'm struggling because that could lead to child removal, which is another concern I have. So there were more issues than just the child's behavior, right? However, in this system, typically we focus on the child. And this service, this trauma coach service, is focused on that foster parent. And so let me back you up and tell you about how it started for Annie. So Annie, which is me, I went to Luck, and my children were getting mental health services. And the next thing I know, I'm talking to them and I'm feeling more regulated. I'm having greater capacity because I have somebody safe to talk to. And so now I'm looking forward to my child's therapy as much as my child is looking forward to the therapy. But DCF still didn't feel very safe to me to talk to. And I still felt very overwhelmed. And if my child didn't have therapy, I literally felt isolated. I had no one to talk to. So next slide, Jackie. So foster parents really work in isolation. And this is a quote from a foster parent here. Really, in foster care, the Encompass program was the only support I have right now. So I don't really have outside support of any kind. I think the Encompass program has been the highlight of my year. And this is very typical of what a foster parent feels like. When you are at home with this child and you call the DCF worker and nobody answers, and you call and the therapist says, we have a 6-month waiting list to get your child seen. Who's helping you in this moment? And this Encompass program was a lifesaver for many of these kids, or many of these families, especially during this COVID pandemic, when we felt as a whole society even more isolated. Next slide, Jackie. Okay, so another quote from a foster parent. And so just for the trauma coach to offer insight into this kind of what's normal and what is not normal, who to talk to, what to do. The trauma coach is someone who experienced it. So I would say the most valuable part was that one-on-one trauma coaching. So again, I'm going to ask you guys to think about when you had your first day on the job as a legislator. Did you know what to do? Did you know who to go to? Did you know who to ask? Did you have an idea of how the whole system worked? I mean, you had some planning and some training, but honestly, who did you want to talk to? And I'm guessing many of you wanted to have conversations with other people who had been there and done that. So that experience, that safe person to talk to, is critical in any job, right? It's not actually unique to fostering. Doctors train doctors, nurses train nurses. Foster parents should train other foster parents because they've been there, they've done that, and they know what it feels like and how it's going to play out, right? So next slide, please, Jackie. All right, so when we were sitting around, Dr. Heather Forkey, she resurrected me from burned out foster parent to a parenting professional. She saw the diamond in the rough. She said, okay, so Diane, you still have a ton to give, and I'm going to write a grant. We're going to figure this out, and we're going to do it together, and you're going to tell me what works. And that was such a beautiful process because right from the beginning, I was given the power to create something that felt right to foster parents. So this comes from outside of DCF. It's coming from a medical background. This medical provider who, Dr. Heather Forkey, I owe everything, in my opinion, to her. She got this started, right? And then I pull from all my years of experience of fostering, and I pull from my experience working with therapists so that I understand how to work with others like Dr. Jessica Griffin and advocate for my child for the right type of therapy. All that experience matters, but I needed somebody to look from outside the system and figure out how to support the system. How is it that trauma coach support is different? First of all, the word support feels a little ugly to me. I'm not going to lie. It feels terrible. I don't know if you have legislative support groups, but that might not sound so great, right? It feels yucky. So I don't like to use that. What I like is something more like we are professional development. So every other week, Ashley and I get together and we have professional development conversations with other trauma coaches. And from there, we talk about things in a professional manner. So whether you're a teacher and you have, a professional development day, or you're a therapist and you have case consultation, or you're here at the hospital and they have this morning huddle, we don't say, oh, the docs are having their morning support group, right? That's not what this is about. This is a lot more than just support. So I put all those words on there because this is what's happening. What's happening for these trauma coaches is we are providing them with consultation. We're providing them with training. And then we're mentoring them, and they are then mentoring others. Next slide, Jackie. Okay. So now I'd like to talk about my coworker, Zena. Zena's quote says, the best part of it all is knowing that I can contribute to the stability and emotional well-being of a child in need and be of support and reassurance to a caregiver that does not understand their parenting potential. So my coworker, Zena, is bilingual. She does what I do in Spanish and in English, so she does it even better than me. She's also a kinship parent, and she provides an extremely important role in that kinship, that need for kinship regulation. Because that, if you think about when you make a decision to be a foster parent, for many families, they might have thought about it for years. They might have planned ahead. They might have even, put an addition on their house or waited till their other children graduated and went off to college. That was a purposeful decision made with the best of intentions. Even those parents that made a decision to foster, typically, and I don't have the statistics on this, and maybe Mary would be able to provide some. I don't know if anybody has them, but anecdotally, I can tell you 1 to 2 placements and they're burned out already. They're done. So even in the best of circumstances, unrestricted foster parents burn out at an extremely high rate. Kinship foster families, typically, they will provide for that kin during that time, and then they're done. It's not even that they're burned out. They never asked to get in this in the first place. They never decided this. They were just told, hey, your sister's kids came into care. Would you be willing to be their parent? We have about 72 hours, at most, or maybe tomorrow we'll come by, we'll do a home study, and the next night we place it with you. And the kinship providers have an extra layer of concern about the department and feel unsafe about the department, and they need that safety net to somebody from outside of the department where the Encompass program lives to be able to say, okay, this is how I can help you to navigate them. The foster parents that are kinship also unlikely have as much training. They probably didn't have any MAP training. If maybe they would get it later on, but much of them, it was just thrown into their lap last minute. So Zena has managed to navigate all of those things. And I wish she was sitting right here today so that she could hear me, because I mean this from the bottom of my heart. She is perhaps the best parent I've ever met in my entire life. She's an amazing woman who has not only understood her own potential, she has taken care of her family. She has navigated the difficulties of some family members feeling that, she shouldn't be doing that and she shouldn't be adding that stress, and she's let somebody else deal with it, and she still should be Auntie Zena. And then she has passed this knowledge and this training on to others, and she has grown and developed as a professional in the same way that I have here. When I first became a trauma coach, I didn't know what a PowerPoint was, no less be able to run slides. You got to be kidding me. And I still am gaining those skills, and I'm still learning as I go. And Zena is also now training our families in Spanish in group classes as well. And through Ashley and Jackie's work at Luck, we have collaborated to be able to expand trauma coach services for English and Spanish speaking for this entire North Central and Worcester area, so that we feel very confident that if you want services in Spanish as a foster care provider, we have them for you in both individual and group classes. Okay, next slide, last slide, sustainability. So how do we keep this going? How do we, Diane, you said it's really wonderful and it's working and it feels great. And Dr. Forkey turned you into this wonderful resurrected foster parent, so that the end of your journey wasn't that you failed, that you quit, that you just couldn't do it anymore, but the end of your journey was that you can now, even though you're not fostering in your home, you can provide it to others. How do we find more Diane Lannys, right? Well, we're out there. Okay, there are a lot of us, and if you talk to a family resource worker, they can see the signs of burnout. They can see the signs of stress. There are also, frankly, many of them who just their family situations have changed. And so they're no longer able to foster in their home, but they're absolutely able to do a 9-to-5 type trauma coach job. So I have no doubt that they're out there, but I also think that we need to think very creatively about how to make this a matter of fact thing. So when foster parents go to their training to become a foster parent, they are matched with a mentor, a trauma coach, essentially right from the get-go, so that you have somebody with experience that you can get the answers to the questions that you have. And I only have a minute worth of time, and I could talk about this honestly for days, but we only have 16 of us on this call today, and this is the last presentation. I feel very strongly that you may have some questions, and I want to make sure that you understand how the trauma coach program works and how we think that it could work really system-wide for everyone. So I really want to give space to those questions. If I'm going to pass that, I don't know if Mary or Kat, I'm not sure who's running the questions, but I'm gonna pass that along, and please feel free to ask me anything.
So thank you, Diane. I'll take it back and encourage anyone, the floor is open. If you have questions, you can raise your hand or you can put it in the chat. Just to sort of kick it off, I'm not a foster parent, but I've worked in this field for a long time. And I think all of us on the call share a goal of wanting to improve outcomes for children in foster care. And what what we've all learned, right, is foster parents get trainings and we're recruiting, and yet we were hearing the same type of things from our foster parents. They feel isolated. Sometimes they feel like they're bad parents or that they're being blamed for a child's behavior. Often they feel as if they have so much to contribute, and yet nobody's asking them. And what the beauty of this, of the trauma coaching, of the peer network, is that for foster parents, they're no longer alone. There's somebody there who understands, and they're connected. And as Diane said, there's no other career in the world that you take on and nobody mentors you. So the idea that you're partnered with somebody who can show you the ropes is just critical. The other idea is skills. We've learned nothing, if nothing, during the last 4 or 5 sessions. Children who have experienced trauma show that experience in their behaviors, in the way they attend school, in what they say. We need to help parents understand what that looks like. And again, the moment a parent sees that, it's not, I'm a bad parent. It's what can I do to help you now that I understand why you're behaving this way? And then, the last idea that I hear from foster parents all the time, they want to be treated as part of the team. And they spend the most time with children in foster care and are often marginalized as an afterthought about what's going on in this kid's lives. So, Diane and her team, and their ability to elevate the role and the voice and empower foster parents to use that voice for children in their care is just so powerful. So having said all of that, Diane, here's my question.
Yeah.
Why does it take, how do we move this upstream, right? So often, like, we wait for a crisis, we wait till the kitchen's on fire, and then we send in the trenches, but we send in the troops. How do we move this upstream?
Yeah, I think that we're really talking about major system change. Foster parents are not currently included as part of the team. They don't get union benefits. They don't get retirement packages. They don't get grief counselors. I have to tell you, sometimes it's those things that break a parent. When you've raised a kid for 3 years and then reunification happens, and so the kiddo goes back to the mom, you are understanding that that's your role, that what you have to do as a foster parent is you have to send the kid back. That's your job, right? You're taking care of this kid until such time as the bio parents can reunify. But you're still grieving because you did your job. You loved that child. You did everything for that child for 3 years. I get emotional about it now because it's impossible not to. Because when you love a child with your whole heart, and then 3 years later, they say to you, Tuesday, the kid is not yours anymore. See how, I can't help it. It's impossible not to get emotional about that. So let's say that happens at 2:00 on Tuesday. At 4:00 on Tuesday, another DCF worker from that same office calls you and says, "Hey, I hear you have an empty bed." There's a lot of emotion going on there, right? And how do you handle that? You have love in your heart to give, but you're grieving. And then you try to call your worker because you're angry, and you say, "You know what? I have to vent because I'm really mad that you even want to think about filling that, Marcy's bed tonight." And that DCF worker says, "I'm sorry, I'm not able to answer your call right now because we're attending a grief session." What? So there's a disconnect, right? That we're not a part of the system. We don't know what meetings you're going to, what your rules are, what the attendance is that's necessary. And DCF workers have a really hard job, right? They have to do hard things and have hard conversations every day. And they frankly don't have the time to hold all of that and be that emotional container that we talk about for you as a foster parent. They have a job to do, and that job is to fill that bed and get that child a space, right? Somebody, and perhaps that somebody should come from outside the system, a system that's not so heavily burdened at the moment, has to be the emotional container for them. So how do we make this happen? We make this happen as a matter of course. We match these folks, we find these folks, and we say, "Hey, listen, we have this idea, we're going to train you to be a trauma coach, and we're going to match you with Sally, who's taking this MAP training. So you had mentioned training also, Mary, and most foster parents, it was a comment I saw in the chat about trauma. Yes, foster parents get about an hour of trauma training, to be honest, but you learn it the hard way. You learn it in the trenches, and then the trauma training that you receive through us at through the Encompass program really reinforces what you already knew. And I'm going to segue here because I have to give you an example, because I think a lot of people on this call don't fully understand, what do you mean that you parent differently? So many of you as parents probably have heard of a concept of a timeout. Give your kid a timeout. That's typical parenting advice for a typical child. And you say, you know, get out of my face. What you do is wrong. Go to the corner, like shove them away. That is something so that they tell the parents, gets to take a breath, and then you go back to it. If you do that for a child of neglect, you may reinforce the neglect. Then you certainly haven't changed the behavior. And if you have teenagers like I did, they were like, yeah, I'll stay in my room all day. They won't come out. So you have not, you learn in the trenches of being a foster parent that you have to train with that trauma lens. You have to understand how their brain might work differently, and you have to try a different approach. And when you talk to your friends and you say, hey, yeah, I don't give him a timeout, I give him a time in, and he sits with me in the kitchen while I cook, they're like, well, it seems like you're just reinforcing his bad behavior. But you know that you're not. Your friends don't necessarily know, but your fellow trauma coach does.
Right. And I think in addition, one of the really key pieces for me in the resource parent curriculum is when we're talking about advocacy, we're letting foster parents know they might be the most trauma-informed person in the room when they're advocating for their child. You know, they might be in a room full of teachers and, you know, their doctor and their, you know, coach or whatever the case may be, but you are the most, at least trauma-informed about the kiddo in your care. And potentially the most trauma-informed person in the room in general. And so in advocating, sometimes advocating is really providing psychoeducation to the other team members of like, my kiddo is having a meltdown today because it's the anniversary of their parents' death and it's a really difficult day. And so let's try to work through this. And so I think that is a huge takeaway for me whenever we do that training is you might be the most trauma-informed person in the room, and what does that look like for advocating for your child?
We are coming up on 11 o'clock, but one of the questions, and I think you've all talked about it in different ways, but just to be really clear, like how is this different than the way we have traditionally approached fostering or supporting foster parents or networking with foster parents? What's different about this program than what is currently in place at the Department of Children and Families? Who wants to take that? Jackie?
I just wanted to say, and then I'll certainly pass it over to Diane and Ashley, but I think the difference being an outsider looking in, right? So when we were launching this program and helping to provide the support, it is not just the support, right? Like when you think about that image that Diane had, is you're not thinking about a caregiver in isolation and how are you then able to truly wrap around and help support someone and have that be somebody who isn't your boss.
Yes.
Right.
That's great.
So I think about, you know, for
outside.
clinicians, right? It's the outside person. It's a consultant or a trainer, someone who is coming into your space and saying, I have your best interests at heart. And also I don't pay you, or I don't do your performance evaluation, and how important that is in professional development and especially for foster parents.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Diane or Ashley, any comment?
I just wanted to reinforce everything Jackie just said and say that it's necessary to create safety in order for a person to become a regulated parent and can be able to hold everything that they need to hold. They need a safe person to kind of unload onto, right? You know, think about what you do when you get upset, you phone a friend, you need that person to be able to say, okay, can I just tell you this and can you hold it for me? And then I'm going to go back to my parenting job. And so oftentimes people do have good relationships with their DCF worker, but it's still a little bit unsafe because you might be concerned that if they see you as dysregulated, it could cause a disruption, and we don't want a placement disruption.
Right, right. Well, thank you. It is 11 o'clock. I know folks have other commitments. I really want to thank the team for the presentation today. It is such important work, and there's so many takeaways. The one I always leave with after an opportunity to spend some time with Diane is to think about how lucky we are that she took another step in her fostering career. And I am reminded all the time as foster parents think about stopping, that it doesn't have to be an end. There is another step and a way that they can continue to give to this really important work. And, you know, Diane's taught me a lot, but that is one of them. We need to provide an opportunity for foster parents to continue to gracefully be able to share their experience, their knowledge, their skills with a network of foster parents, like-minded foster parents who want to do this work. So thank you. Thank you, Diane, for everything. And thank you, Jackie and Ashley, for your time today. And for our friends in the legislature, thank you for joining us these many mornings. We so appreciate your interest. Look forward to continuing to work with you in partnership. Thank you.